I thought my neighbor was just lonely, then I found out he'd been watching my life closer than I ever realized. Throwaway account? I'm writing this partly because I need distance from it and partly because if I don't put it somewhere outside my head, I'm going to keep replaying it forever. I'm a pretty private person, always have been. I don't overshare online, I don't talk much about my personal life, and I've always believed that if you mind your own business, most problems won't find you. That belief used to make me feel safe. Now I realize it just made me predictable. This started 3 years ago when I moved into a small apartment complex on the edge of the city. Nothing fancy, 6 units, quiet street, mostly older tenants, the kind of place where nothing ever really happens. That was exactly why I chose it. On my first day moving in, I met him. I'll call him Tom. Tom lived in the unit directly across from mine. Late 40s, maybe early 50s, clean, polite, soft-spoken. He helped me carry a box without me asking, told me he'd lived there forever, said he liked having a calm place to come home to. So did I. At first, our interactions were minimal and normal. A nod in the hallway. A hey when taking out trash. Occasional small talk about the weather or the building. Nothing weird. A few weeks in, he left a note on my door. Package delivered to my unit by mistake, come by any time. I thanked him, he waved it off. Neighbors look out for each other, he said. Again, normal. Over time, he started noticing things. Small things. Looks like you've been working late. New shoes. Haven't seen your car this weekend. He always said it casually, with a smile like observations anyone could make just by coincidence. I told myself I was imagining it. I'm not great at reading social cues and I didn't want to project meaning where there wasn't any. Plus, he wasn't wrong. I was working late, I had been out of town. I figured he was just bored. The first moment that actually unsettled me happened about 4 months after I moved in. I came home with groceries and found Tom standing in the hallway, waiting, not packing, not lingering, just standing there like he'd timed it. Oh good, he said, you're back. Something about the way he said it made my shoulders tense. He told me the building manager had asked him to keep an eye out while she was away. That seemed odd but plausible. Then he said, you had someone over last night. It wasn't a question. I froze. I had had someone over, a friend, nothing dramatic, but I hadn't mentioned it to anyone. I laughed awkwardly. Thin walls, I said. He nodded, but his eyes lingered on my face a little too long. After that, I became aware of him in a way I hadn't been before. I noticed he always knew when I was home. He always knew when I left. He always seemed to appear just after I arrived. Still nothing overt. No comments about my body. No inappropriate remarks. No obvious invasion of space. Just awareness. A few months later, my routine changed. New job, different hours, earlier mornings. Tom adapted instantly. He started running into me at different times, different days, always friendly, always conversational. Once he asked how my new manager was. I hadn't told him I had a new manager. I said, what do you mean? He smiled. You mentioned the job change. I didn't remember mentioning it. But again, doubt crept in. Maybe I did. Maybe I forgot. That's how it starts. The doubt doesn't scream. It whispers. The real shift came when my relationship ended. I'd been dating someone casually for a while, nothing serious but enough that they were over often. When it ended, I didn't talk about it to anyone in the building. 2 days later, Tom knocked on my door. He held a small plant. For your place, he said, breakups are hard. I felt my stomach drop. I asked how he knew. He shrugged. Just a feeling. I took the plant because refusing felt rude, and because part of me still didn't want to believe anything was wrong. But that night I barely slept. I kept replaying every interaction we'd ever had. The comments. The timing. The way he always seemed just slightly ahead of me. The next morning, I noticed something that made my chest tighten. My doormat was different. Not replaced, adjusted. Turned slightly. Like someone had moved it and tried to put it back exactly how it was. That was the first time I checked my door lock twice. I told myself I was being paranoid. I didn't know yet that Tom wasn't just observing. He was tracking. And I wouldn't realize how much he knew about my life until I found something that proved I'd never been as invisible as I thought. Once you notice something is off, your brain does this awful thing where it starts replaying everything at double speed. Moments you dismissed suddenly come back sharper. Conversations you forgot feel scripted in hindsight. It's like realizing you've been walking through fog and only now noticing the shapes inside it. After the doormat incident, I became hyper-aware of my apartment. I checked the lock every night, sometimes twice. I started leaving a shoe angled a certain way behind the door just to see if it moved when I got back. It never did, but that almost made it worse. There was nothing concrete to justify the unease. Tom didn't escalate. He stayed exactly the same. Friendly, polite, observant. That consistency made me question myself more than if he'd done something obviously wrong. Then small things started happening that couldn't be explained by coincidence. One morning I overslept badly, missed my alarm entirely. I rushed out the door late, hair still wet, coffee unfinished. Tom was in the hallway. "Rough morning?" he asked. I stopped. "How did you?" "You slammed your door," he said smoothly. "Figured you were in a hurry." "Maybe." Later that week, I came home carrying takeout from a place across town I'd never ordered from before. Tom noticed immediately. "Didn't know you liked Thai food," he said. I stared at him. "I don't think I've ever seen you bring that home before," he added quickly, smiling. I laughed it off, but my appetite vanished. I started testing it. Nothing dramatic, just tiny deviations. I took a different route home from work. Tom asked if traffic was bad on the new way I'd taken. I stayed overnight at a friend's place without telling anyone. The next day, he asked if everything was okay because my lights hadn't been on. I stopped answering questions altogether. That's when he started offering information instead. "Your sister called while you were out," he said once. "I don't have a sister." When I corrected him, he blinked. "Oh," he said, "must have been someone else." The lie wasn't the scary part. The scary part was that he'd tried it, like he was checking how much I'd push back. Around this time, the building manager returned. I went to her office and asked casually whether she'd asked Tom to keep an eye out while she was gone. She looked confused. "No," she said, "why would I?" That night I couldn't sit still. I realized Tom had been using authority, imagined authority, to justify his presence in my life, to make his awareness feel normal, sanctioned. I started documenting. Dates. Times. Exact words. I didn't know what I'd need it for, but I knew I'd regret not having it. Then something happened that crossed from unsettling into undeniable. I came home one evening to find an envelope slid halfway under my door. No stamp, no address. Just my name written neatly. Inside was a single sheet of paper. On it was a list. My work schedule. The gym I went to. The days I usually did laundry. The nights I ordered food instead of cooking. At the bottom, written smaller. "Routine helps people feel safe." My hands went numb. I checked the hallway. Empty. I didn't sleep in my apartment that night. I stayed at a friend's place for 2 nights. I didn't tell them everything, just enough to justify needing a couch. Saying it out loud made it feel real in a way I wasn't ready for yet. I kept telling myself there had to be a rational explanation, a misunderstanding, some bizarre attempt at friendliness that went too far. But that piece of paper kept replaying in my head. Routine helps people feel safe. That wasn't neighborly. That was observational. On the 3rd day, I went back to my apartment in the middle of the afternoon. Broad daylight, people around. I didn't want my first night back to be after dark. Tom's door was closed. I unlocked my apartment and immediately noticed something else was wrong. My trash had been taken out. I hadn't taken it out. The bag I remembered tying the night before I left was gone. I stood there staring at the empty bin, my heart hammering. Nothing else seemed disturbed, no drawers open, no obvious signs of entry. Just maintenance. That's what scared me most. I sat on my couch and tried to think logically. Either someone had a key or someone had learned how to get in. I called the building manager and asked when the locks had last been changed. "About 5 years ago," she said. "Why?" I asked who had copies. She listed former tenants, maintenance staff, emergency spares. Tom had lived there longer than 5 years. I didn't confront him right away. Instead, I bought a cheap indoor camera and set it up facing the door. Nothing fancy, just enough to tell me if someone came in while I wasn't there. The first night nothing happened. The second night nothing happened. On the third night at 2:14 a.m. the camera recorded movement. Not the door opening. Just the handle. Turning. Stopping. Turning again. Then stillness. I watched the clip over and over until my chest hurt. Whoever it was didn't come in. They just wanted to know if they could. The next morning Tom knocked on my door. I didn't answer. He knocked again. "Everything okay?" he asked through the door. I opened it. He looked relieved. "I haven't seen you in a few days," he said. I was worried. I asked him directly, "Why do you know my schedule?" His smile didn't fade, but it tightened. "I pay attention," he said. "People don't notice how visible they are." I asked him about the note. He didn't deny it. "I thought it might help you feel grounded," he said calmly. "You seemed stressed." I told him he'd crossed a line. He tilted his head. "There are lines everywhere," he said. "Most people just don't see them." That's when I realized arguing with him was pointless. He didn't operate by normal social rules. He believed his behavior was justified. Necessary. I told him to stay away from me. He nodded. "I already do," he said. That night the camera recorded him standing in the hallway outside my door. Not touching it. Just standing there. For almost 10 minutes. I moved out within a week. I didn't wait for the lease to end. I didn't argue about penalties. I packed what mattered and left everything else. Before I went, I filed a report. Not because I thought it would go anywhere, but because I needed a record. The officer listened carefully, took notes, and said something that stuck with me. "People like this don't escalate quickly, they escalate quietly." Tom never contacted me again. But sometimes when I come home at night, I still check my doormat. Still check my locks. Still feel that old tension in my shoulders. Hear what I learned. Being observed without consent changes you. Not because you're weak, but because awareness without control is a kind of captivity. If someone knows your routines better than you do, that's not care. That's surveillance. And if your instincts tell you something is wrong, even when you can't explain it yet, listen. I didn't at first. And I almost paid for it with my sense of safety.